أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعده سيدنا ونبينا وحبيبنا ومولانا محمد صلى الله تعالى عليه وسلم وعلى آله وصحابه ومن اهتدى بهداه إلى يوم الدين وإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهادي هدي محمد صلى الله تعالى عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. ربي لا تؤاخذني مما يقولون واغفر لي ما لا يعلمون واجعلني خيرا مما يظنون. Amma ba'd. My dear brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Welcome to the House of Dua, and welcome to our continuing conversation on the issue of choosing the right leaders. My dear brothers and sisters in Islam, in our last presentation, we concluded that most of the challenges that we are facing into this world are largely a result of bad leadership. In most countries of the world, there are crises of poverty, crises of injustice and oppression, crisis of insecurity, man's inhumanity to man, crises that are unimaginable. In spite of the level of civilization in today's world, we find that in some cases we have become even worse than animals when it comes to man-to-man relationship. For no reason, people are taking arms against their fellow human beings in the world we live. And most of these are resulting from bad leadership. More and more people are gaining access to power positions in the society through crooked means. They lobby their way to positions of authority and they make promises that they will not keep. At the end of the day, they turn their back against those who have put them in such position. They turn themselves into tyrants and oppressors. They turn themselves into looters of the properties of the state. They turn themselves into semi-gods, untouchable. They turn themselves as individuals who are above the law of their countries. This is the predicament we have in today's life, my dear brothers and sisters in Islam. Why is it so? Today we want to offer one of the reasons why things have come to be like this, so that jointly we can find an answer to the problem. One of the main reasons why it has become difficult to hold people in power accountable is the lack of or the weakness of what is known as the principle of the rule of law. Yes, the principle of the rule of law. That principle states that the law rather than the man should rule. That principle requires that everyone in the society should be equal before the law. That the law is supreme and no one is above the law. It requires that the individual is innocent unless he is proved guilty. Therefore, in any form of accusation, there must be what is known as due process. The principle of the rule of law also requires that the collective, the populace, is more important than the individual. And the principle of the rule of law also requires that the law, same law, should have universal application, should apply to everybody, irrespective of your position in society or your color or your creed. This is what the rule of law is all about. If this is adhered to, many of the problems we find in today's world will be eliminated. Let's take example from the lawgiver, the creator, the sustainer, the provider, the curer, the one who is in absolute control of our lives, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He created us, subjected us to same conditions. As human beings, we are subject to the same treatment by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We go to sleep, we go to restroom, we eat, we enjoy leisure, we sleep, and we are subject to what happens in the day and in the night. These are all human conditions that are common to all of us. The Creator, therefore, does not discriminate between His creatures. From time to time, He sends messages through messengers and prophets to guide mankind. And among these messengers were some that were leaders themselves. like Prophet Dawud alayhi salam and Sulaiman alayhi salam, like Prophet Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam. They were the political leaders of their time. There were also notable people in history mentioned in the Quran that distinguished themselves in one way or the other in relation to how they interact with the people of their time. A king known as Talut, for example, was sent to his people. He led them to battlefield and they won. Zulkarnain was a notable man who traveled from the west to the east, and in spite of his highly placed position, was able to come down to help the people of his time to do something that would be of benefit to them without charging them any form of payment. We also saw similar example in the life of Prophet Sulaiman alayhi salam, in using his own position as a prophet and a king to bring another king into the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without firing any shot, using his position as a king and prophet to the benefit of the cause of Allah and humanity. These are the examples that we ought to emulate as leaders of our various countries, but unfortunately, people do whatever they like nowadays. Why is this so? We are postulating today that the reason is that there is near absence or very weak state of the rule of law in such countries. And as a result of this condition, individuals who occupy positions of power are not only becoming more and more powerful, they are abusing such power and getting away free, thereby setting a very dangerous example for others. In response to this, those who are oppressed and feeling neglected in society found themselves on the street, protesting day in and day out, seeking their right and asking for the system to be fair and just. My dear brothers in Islam, what is the stand of Islam when it comes to issues like this, especially the manifestation, the application of the rule of law to the society? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has several verses in the Quran in which he had admonished mankind to be fair and just, to apply the same principles to everyone, irrespective of color and creed, irrespective of social standing in the society. There are several verses of the Quran to this effect. In Surah An-Nahl, for example, chapter 16 of the Quran, Allah says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَأْمُرُ بِالْعَدْلِ وَالْإِحْسَانِ وَإِيتَاءِ ذِي الْقُرْبَى وَيَنْهَى عَنِ الْفَحْشَاءِ وَالْمُنكَرِ وَالْبَغْيِ يَعِظُكُمْ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَذَكَّرُونَ. And in Surah An-Nisa, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَأْمُرُكُمْ أَن تُؤَدُّوا الْأَمَانَاتِ إِلَىٰ أَهْلِهَا وَإِذَا حَكَمْتُم بَيْنَ النَّاسِ أَن تَحْكُمُوا بِالْعَدْلِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ نِعْمَ مَا يَعِظُكُم بِهِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ كَانَ سَمِيعًا بَصِيرًا. In Surah Al-Ma'idah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا كُونُوا قَوَّامِينَ لِلَّهِ شُهَدَاءَ بِالْقِسْطِ وَلَا يَجْرِمَنَّكُمْ شَنَآنُ قَوْمٍ أَلَّا تَعْدِلُوا اعْدِلُوا هُوَ أَقْرَبُ لِلتَّقْوَىٰ وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ إِنَّ اللَّهَ خَبِيرٌ بِمَا تَعْمَلُونَ. In Surah Al-Nisa again, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا كُونُوا قَوَّامِينَ بِالْقِسْطِ شُهَدَاءَ لِلَّهِ وَلَوْ عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَوِ الْوَالِدَيْنِ وَالْأَقْرَبِينَ إِن يَكُن غَنِيًّا أَوْ فَقِيرًا فَاللَّهُ أَوْلَىٰ بِهِمَا وَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا الْهَوَىٰ أَن تَعْدِلُوا وَإِن تَلْوُوا أَوْ تُعْرِضُوا فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ كَانَ بِمَا تَعْمَلُونَ خَبِيرًا. In all these verses put together, there is a common theme. And that theme is a command, a decree from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that same law should apply to all of us who live in the same community or the same country or the same earth as much as possible. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from time to time send revelations through the messengers and made these revelations applicable to everyone without distinction. That is the principle he wants us to follow. Out of his kindness, he has also allowed us to make laws that will govern ourselves. Such laws are permissible to the extent that they don't contradict the divine law of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as stated in the Quran and as exemplified by Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. That's why he told us in Surah An-Nisa, Ati'ullaha wa ati'ur Rasulah wa ulul amri minkum. Obey Allah's commandment and follow the example of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam, and also obey those who are in authority over you. Obey the laws that they make, obey the instructions that they give to you, as long as those instructions do not go against the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. My dear brothers and sisters in Islam, the combined effect of all the verses we have rehearsed to you is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands justice and fairness in the society. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will want us to be just, to be fair, to apply the same rule to everybody, irrespective of background, irrespective of social standing, irrespective of color and creed, irrespective of ethnicity. But then we find nowadays that this principle is being eroded in the life we live. A situation has arisen now where there are people or there are countries in which there is a law for the rich as distinct from the poor, a law for the white as distinct from the black or the colored people, a law for those who are strong and a law for those who are weak. When those who are weak commit offense against the law, they are made to bear the brunt of justice. But when those who are rich commit similar offense, they are made to go scot-free. In the world we live now, we have seen application of this attitude even at the international level on major issues that are affecting the world. Consider the way the world has responded to the killing of a Palestinian journalist, Shireen Abu Akleh, who was killed in Palestine. Consider what is happening in Iraq, as well as in Syria, as well as in Afghanistan. Consider what is happening in Ukraine right now. Consider what is happening even in the United States of America and other advanced countries. There is this double standard. People are being made to believe that the law that applies to them does not apply to those who are rich and powerful in the society. What is the attitude of Islam when it comes to matters like this? From what we have stated so far, you can see that this is against the principle in Islam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants equality before the law. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants supremacy before the law. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants universal application of the same law to the same people. That's why he sent down revelations and made these revelations applicable. He told the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam, Inna anzalna ilayka al-kitaba bil-haqqi litahkuma bayna nas bima araka Allah. That's in verse 105 of Surah An-Nisa. We have sent down this revelation to you, Ya Muhammad, in truth, to enable you judge among people with fairness, to enable you judge among people on the basis of equality without discrimination, using what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has revealed to you as a guide. As we stated in our last presentation, there are different ways by which people are brought into leadership, either by appointment or by selection or by election or by coronation or any other means. But irrespective of how you come into the office, it is expected that a leader should adhere to the principle of fairness and justice. To enable us achieve that, that's why we have what is called the rule of law. Today, there is no gainsaying the fact that democracy is the best system of representation mankind has known. Democracy started in Greece, even prior to the coming of Jesus Christ, alayhi salam, in the days of the philosophers. Philosophers like Plato, Aristotle, and Socrates, and many other philosophers that came after them. They sat down and postulated on how the society should be organized in such a way that there will be fairness and justice. There will be prosperity for all. There will be greater good for the greater majority. Today, America represents the last hope of democracy on the planet. But look at what is happening in America today. There are those who believe that they are above the law. There are those who believe that whatever is happening, if it's not in their favor, it cannot be called the truth. You are familiar with what is known as the big lie. If it's happening in America like this, you can imagine what is going to happen in other countries where there are weak institutions for the enforcement of the rule of law. All these are made possible because leaders of today are becoming very unfriendly with the principle of the rule of law. They are actually working against the principle of the rule of law. Instead, they want to behave as if they are above the law. Let's consider the recent issue now. Under the presidential system of America, when a president is leaving office, all the important papers of national security significance are transferred to the National Archives. If there is a law that allows that to happen, why do you think an individual should take it upon himself to say, you know what, I'm going to carry these papers to my home? And now, the law enforcement agencies are taking the initiative to retrieve such papers. We don't know the details, but then people are asking the wrong questions. The wrong question is, we have never seen a thing like this before, that the house of a former president is being raided by the law enforcement agencies. We have never seen a thing like this. Yes, you have never seen a thing like this because a thing like this has never happened before. If the law says such documents should be taken to the archive, why will an individual take the documents to his house? That should be the first question to be asked. It does not matter what steps are taken to go and retrieve such documents. If he has broken the law, he has broken the law. He will be held accountable like every other person. That is how it's supposed to be under the rule of law. And this is the example we learn from Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam, that the same law should apply to everybody. There's a famous hadith narrated by Aisha radiallahu anha, the wife of the Holy Prophet Muhammad. He said one day a lady from Banu Makhzum in Makkah, those who were very much opposed to the Holy Prophet Muhammad initially, that lady was found to have stolen a certain amount of hardware, whatever. She was brought to the Holy Prophet Muhammad for judgment. Before that time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had sent a revelation to the Holy Prophet Muhammad, declaring, Wasa'ariku wasa'arika fakto'u aydiyahuma jaza'an bima kasaba nakala minallah wallahu azizun hakim. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told the Holy Prophet Muhammad in that revelation that from that time of the revelation, anybody who was caught stealing should have his or her hand cut off, subject to the requirements of that law. There are certain steps to be taken. It's not just as easy as cutting off somebody's hand. There have to be investigation. The item stolen has to be of certain quantity or value. There have to be evidence. There have to be a due process. And when the person is found guilty, his hand should be cut off. Now this woman stole, a famous woman from a nobility, from Banu Makhzum. They brought her to the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam for judgment. But people were wondering why a person of nobility like that should receive the same amount of judgment as those who are poor in the society. They were begging the Prophet to set her free. They didn't know what to do, so they sent one of the closest friends of the Prophet to him, Usama bin Zayd radiallahu anhu, to go and plead with the Prophet to spare this woman's life on account of the fact that she was from a rich family. And when Osama bin Zayd got to the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam, he made one of the most famous declarations. He told the people of Makkah, generations that came before you were destroyed because whenever the noble people committed the offense, either by stealing, they were let go. But whenever the poor people committed similar offense, they were persecuted and punished. He declared, if Fatima radiallahu anha, the daughter of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam, were to have stolen in the same manner this woman had stolen, the hands of the daughter of the Prophet Fatima radiallahu anha will be cut off. What does that mean? Supremacy of the law. No one is above the law. Universal applicability of the same law. Equality before the same law. This is the example in Islam. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala expects us to achieve. But today, the picture is becoming different in many countries in the world. The principle of the rule of law is being jettisoned at family level, at national level, even at international level. Look at the mockery that is going on at the United Nations. There are those who are known to be the permanent members of the United Nations. So every other nation is just come and go. It is what is suitable to those permanent members that will be applicable to the entire world. And even when one of them has become a murderer, that same country will be allowed to veto the decisions of those who, together with them, are members of the Security Council of the United Nations. And dear brothers and sisters in Islam, we need to follow the example set for us by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran and the Hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. We need to promote justice and fairness in the world we live. Otherwise, there will be no peace. There will be no security. And the best way to promote that peace and security and justice and fairness is through the rule of law. To make sure that the same law applies to everybody, irrespective of your religion, your language, your culture, your social status in the society, irrespective of color. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive our sins. Take shaitan away from our life, take our life far away from the shaitan. Subhanallah wa bihamdi, subhanaka Allahumma bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.